It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to preview Fulham's first ever trip to the Hill Dickinson Stadium. The Hill Dicky on the banks of the River Mersey is going to be a great Fulham contingent heading up to Liverpool for this one. An exciting day, and hopefully we can make it 2 wins in a row. Wow, what heady days those would be as we build, hopefully, on Saturday's win at Wolves, in which this podcast we will have the final word. I'm joined on the Thursday Club today by Jack Collins. Hello.
Hello, Sammy. How you doing?
Good, thank you. And we are joined by host of Fulham Fix and also musician, broadcaster, writer of a fabulous new book. If you're watching on YouTube, I've got it here in my hand, called Whatever Will Be, Will Be. Felix White, hello.
Hi, Sam. I feel really good to be here because I'm watching you all the time. I love Fulhamish very much. Yeah, I'm locked in twice a week at least. So it's good to see you guys.
Yeah.
I'm inside the computer, Felix.
I feel like I'm inside the computer because I have you guys on YouTube.
I'm just getting my money out for you. Thank you for saying
Little
that.
transaction.
Yeah,
and that's the official voice of the club speaking. Okay.
Oh mate, it's so exciting to have you. I've interviewed you before for Fulhamish. That was very much a kind of one-on-one interview, but
yeah, long time ago.
A really long time ago.
Because you just started, hadn't you?
Yeah. And we met in I think it's changed hands now. We met in the Treehouse Hotel in Soho.
There's a secret place by the BBC where everyone, like all the broadcasts, used to go and prepare for shows up in that.
It's where all the pluggers go and meet the people from the BBC.
Exactly.
It's quite a weird little rest. It sounds glamorous, but like it's very, very much not.
Do you know what? You just give me a flashback, but I think I got over animated in that conversation, and I remember like other DJs looking across, giving me daggers, and I realised this is not the thing. You don't talk loud. It's like a library in their thing.
Yeah.
But I got too passionate about Fulham Football Club.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
Like we all do.
Well, look, it's so exciting to have you on. Obviously, we're going to discuss the book, Whatever Will Be, Will Be. It's we go a bit more into detail, but it brought back some wonderful but also slightly repressed memories because, of course, it's about last season's FA Cup run, which doesn't end well for Fulham. But there's some. I was almost just like I had joy and pain almost within about 2 chapters of each other.
That's what football does for you. You hadn't noticed, but I'm actually wearing, this is a very small Fulham character, so I wanted to wear the Fulham kit because it's not just about Fulham, but Fulham do appear in it. I wanted to wear the white Fulham kit, but they said it was too partisan to be wearing clearly a Fulham shirt, so that is the red and black kit. So I'm trying to do the sort of 1975-ish sort of vibe there.
Nice.
That's my Fulham nod on the cover. But yeah, there's plenty of Fulham in there.
Oh, I'm so excited to dive into it. It charters your journey last year of going from the extra preliminary round all the way to the final. Sadly, Fulham didn't go all the way in the FA Cup, but you did.
Yeah, do you know what? It would have been too nice a story if Fulham had won it, I think now. It needed to have the Fulhamish heartbreak in it to tell the story of what the essence is supporting Fulham Football Club. So we've got the 5th round at Old Trafford, which obviously there was a lot of redemption in that moment, given what happened with Mitro and everyone 2 years previously, winning on penalties at Old Trafford. And then the quarterfinal with Palace, obviously most disappointing day in sort of modern memory, really, for Fulham, because it felt like it was there for taking. But my 8-year-old nephew, which we can get into later, I've got into Fulham, I saw his heart break for the first time. So that's what that chapter really takes in.
Welcome to Fulham.
I know. And do you know what? You just had that moment of looking into the void of like, this is my life now.
Yeah.
And so he'll probably be presenting Fulhamish in 20 years.
Well, I wanted to vote about
Fulhamish Juniors, the Academy squad Saturday we put together.
That's a good idea.
I wanted to vote a good 10 minutes to Jet.
Yeah, Jet, love you.
And his love of Fulham, which is so well documented in this. Let's look back at, Jet would have been very, very happy on Saturday evening.
He was. I had a call with him.
Oh, good.
Straight after. We always do when we win.
Fulham 3, Wolves 0. A really lovely afternoon at the Cottage, Jack. And we discussed last week, we said how must win. I predicted that Fulham would win. I kind of thought we'd get the job done. I really thought it was going to be a squeaky, horrible 2-1 fly by the seat of your pants win. And actually, to win it 3-0 against 10 men, the last half an hour once Harry Wilson had scored was just so comfortable. There was no other direction that this game was going in. There was a few shaky moments at 1-0 and at 10 men, but once it was 2-0, I think that's just what everyone needed. It's just brought such a bit of calm, I feel like, to the general fan base. It's papered over some cracks potentially, but it's just nice, isn't it, to bask in 3 points and worry about the problems tomorrow.
And a clean sheet. It was very much deep breath, right? Like, whoa, okay, exhale. And look, I'm with you. I thought we'd win this game, but I thought it would be tighter than this. I ended up saying 3-1 when I went on. I went on a Wolves channel with Daz and Dave, and I said 3-1, but I thought the third goal would come in terms of we'd score on the break as they were pushing for an equaliser in the 93rd minute, and it would be very much like, okay, just relief, the overwhelming emotion. But what came out of it, pretty happy, I think, in terms of the overall performance. Unfortunately, Dan and I did a quick take afterwards and the audio didn't work. So I feel like I'm just coming back to it to say all these things again. But look, Alex,
the professional operation that we run.
Oh, unbelievable!
So
unbelievable.
That wasn't released.
Well, it was unfortunately one for the trash can. Dan had to go home and try and remember everything we'd said later on. So there was a very funny moment. So Dan sent me the video to upload it to Fulhamish, and I was just like, I don't know if it's something wrong with what you've done, but like, it's just you and Jack in mute.
Yeah,
the audio dropped out after 1 minute, so it wasn't like we'd started it wrong. Like, it just dropped out. So
in my head, it's like a 1920s film.
Yeah.
You probably could have understood what we were saying from the
if you were a
pure
professional
animation.
If you were a professional lip reader, it would have been a great episode of the quick take.
Fair enough. Maybe we should look into that in the future. But look, what I said there was there were a couple of moments I think early on where we get the goal relatively early through Ryan Sess. It's abysmal defending from a Wolves perspective. I have no idea what they're trying to do at that moment. I have no idea why they tried to clear it in that manner. It's a lovely little through ball from Raul, and Ryan does what he does best. At first, watching it live, I was like, that is dreadful goalkeeping. But I was speaking to a goalkeeper afterwards in the pub, and he was like, if he'd saved it, it would have been one of the saves of the season. So
right.
I think we can kind of just look at it as...
Which goalkeeper?
Yeah, that's a good
it was
question.
just he was a goalkeeper for a kind of Sunday league team.
Mark
like a
Schwartz.
professional.
I thought you'd met like Antti Niemi in the Duke or something like that.
I mean, I wish. We were just having a chat. But I think the kind of consensus...
Casey Keller, you saw him on the Palace Road.
Yeah, exactly.
Jim Stannard.
I just had a quick word with Pascal Zuberbula. But in terms of when you were looking at...
This could be a podcast just naming random Fulham goalkeepers for an hour.
It's the second time I've had a conversation with someone this week and they've talked about Pascal Zuberbula. So we're in good hands now. But in terms of, you look at that and you think, okay, so you go 1-0 up. This is a Wolves team in crisis. Can you really stick it on them? Can you make sure that away fan base is livid at the end of the game? And basically, that's what Fulham did, with a little bit of help from Wolves. Now, look, take all of this with a pinch of salt that Wolves were dreadful, right? Like, just full stop, passes going out of play, didn't look like they were creating anything. There was very little to like about that Wolves performance. And look, whilst the problems at the club obviously stem from the very top of it, I think there was very little hope that Vitor Pereira was going to keep his job after not playing any central midfield and leaving out his two best players in Andre and Joao Gomes. So you're looking at it and thinking, okay, what do you do to take advantage of that? Fulham they end up with the extra man because a lovely little move from Josh King. He's a little bit lucky. I hadn't seen it back when we were talking about it on the quick take, but it's very much kind of corner of the arm and shirt line, if you will. If it had been called on the pitch, I don't think it would have been pulled back.
I looked at that replay. I think it hits him there.
It's very much there.
I don't know. There's an angle for me that shows it being higher.
I think it comes off his body and then down onto his arm, right? And look, it's one of those. I don't necessarily think the decision is wrong. But I do think if you're looking at it from the perspective of if the referee blows the whistle at that moment, no one's kicking up a major fuss about it either. So it's a little bit grey area. We get a little bit of rub of the green from VAR for once, and Agbadou is sent off. And from that moment, it feels like it should be plain sailing. There's that kind of very brief period at the end of the first half where Wolves kind of put a little bit of pressure on. But from the way that we came out in the second, I thought we were really impressive. I loved seeing Alex Iwobi in the 8. There were a couple of early moments where it did look a little bit shaky, I got to say. So there were a couple of early points on the left-hand side with Sess in that area and Bassi behind him, and they were looking for the pass inside, and Iwobi was sort of drifting around in the 10 space rather than where you'd expect Sasha to be, kind of like off for the inside ball. And you're thinking, all right, okay, you've got to understand the positional differences between the two roles. He felt like he was a bit stuck between where he was meant to be and that left wing space, but he grew into the game perfectly, I thought, and actually the way that he started to dictate play in the middle, the kind of racing forwards to open up opportunities for us, and all of that creativity, yes, against a poor Wolves, yes, against 10 men, really started to push Fulham forward. I was really, really impressed with how we went about our business. And I think the only caveat you'd probably give at the end of the game is perhaps it should have been 4 or 5. And that is a lovely place to be on a Saturday evening.
Yeah.
Come on, Fulham.
I mean, it's exactly that, Felix. It's just really, me and you were actually talking after that Newcastle one, and we were just like texting.
That was a massive game, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a really huge game. I don't know if you guys are saying, someone's saying maybe it's the first 6-pointer Marco's had in the Prem. And the fact we've done that so convincingly is just very, very reassuring, actually, because it felt like we could get dragged into some sort of scrap. First question that popped into my head from what you just said, Jack. If Anthony Robinson's fit again, when he's fit, what are we going to do with Cess? Because Cess is suddenly growing into that left-back spot, isn't he, all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Where's Cess going? Because Cess is going to have to play.
Gives you options, right?
How does that work?
Maybe he drifts back to the right wing. Maybe he drifts onto the left
in
wing.
front of Anthony. Yeah,
there are options. And look, having that depth and that ability to change games, they're very different players. I think Anthony Robinson and Ryan Sessegnon. And Cess has been excellent in that role. He very much isn't the player that gets around the outside and kind of whips in across.
Yeah.
And I think in certain games we've really lacked that because it means that the middle gets really congested. But And especially, I think, is it slightly different now that Kevin's out there? But when Iwobi was playing on the left-hand side, I think he really misses the overlapping run in order to find space.
Totally.
In the same way that Willian did a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think you can then start to mix it up. So if there is, games where Kevin's coming on, at that moment you bring on Cess as well, and you have an underlapper and an overlapper. You can pair people up differently. But having those kind of options, I think, is the thing that Marco's been complaining about not having recently due to those injuries. And I think it's just being able to mix it up. We saw Cess do so well on the right-hand side at the end of last season.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're like, oh, maybe he's the answer at right wing. Chukwueze's obviously come back in. Harry Wilson's done excellently. Having those kind of options is a godsend.
I think, to be honest, it gives Marco that time as well to bed Anthony back in, which is clearly what this injury needs, right? He's going to need probably 10 minutes. When he's back fit, he's going to need 10 minutes at the end of the match, 20 minutes at the end of the match. He can interlink with Ryan. And then once we get to a position where actually Anthony is ready for 90 minutes, then Marco can make that decision as and when Cess drops out of the side, or if he decides, actually, I'm going to use Cess in different positions. I honestly think the way that Sessegnon's playing, like,
it's his shirt to lose.
It is his shirt to lose.
Marco's always been quite like that, right? Like meritocracy. You have the shirt until you lose it. And at the moment, there is no reason to even if Robinson was fully fit right now. And look, I think Anthony Robinson is a majestic footballer. Like, I absolutely love watching him, and I think that Fulham are better when he's in the side. Full stop.
Yeah.
But right now, I think that Marco will well be within his rights, even if Anthony Robinson was fit, to be like, you're gonna have to wait until Cess does something to warrant being changed.
I was just thinking while you said that, if someone had a Fulhamish bingo card, I think there should be a drink for every time that someone says meritocracy on this podcast. We say
ourselves any favours, are we?
We say it every week.
That's true.
I feel like there'd be other things on the Fulhamish bingo card, but definitely meritocracy should be on there. I still don't understand how Sessegnon was in that position as a centre forward.
Yeah.
I just looked back at it and
he's drifted inside because Calvin's gone out wide into the space.
But it's quite a weird position for a left back.
Well, effectively,
it's
think
like Calafiori.
Think about it exactly, right? Like, exactly. Think about it like this. If Calvin's dropping into that left back space, then what Sessegnon is doing is inverting into the midfield, and that moves Alex Iwobi out wide. Then Kevin's coming in, and the ball comes off Raul, and Ryan just sees the gap. But so often we've talked about him being a player who understands space, right, on a football pitch. Someone who sees where the ball is going, see the way that a move is developing, and finds himself in the right place at the right time.
Nice.
Ryan Sessegnon isn't the fastest player in the world. He's not one of those players that's going to beat 3 men by doing a load of step overs. He just reads the space really nicely. I remember when we were in the Championship, we spent a little bit of time being like, actually, if you compare him to a player, he's a bit sort of Thomas Muller-y in the way that he kind of interprets the way that the game is being played.
Yeah.
And that is, he sees the opportunity open up. He sees the Wolves left back pulled out of position, and he just goes gap, and suddenly he's in behind.
Instinctive, yeah.
It's just a really bizarre one. Unless suddenly you're just like, who's that? Is that Sessegnon up front playing centre forward? I thought he was supposed to be left back.
Also, the one player you want it to fall to.
Yeah,
totally.
It's a great pass from Raul.
do.
Really great pass from Raul because he waits
Stunned,
it. He waits it perfectly. Felix, second half, we kind of put on a bit of a show. That goal from Harry Wilson,
man.
That is into the corner as hard as he likes. I mean, I love Harry. And also he was unlucky not to get a second a bit later, probably a bit more into the corner, it would have beaten Johnston. I love Harry on form.
Yeah.
Sadly, doesn't happen all the time, but when he's on form.
I was actually on the way to Brackley because I was doing the TV at half time for the BBC with an FA Cup game, which was great. But whoever it was that commentated coming to the grounds, they said it was on his cultured left foot, which is such a football cliche, but it's such a great way to describe the strike and Harry Wilson, like the art form of it. And the thing with Harry, actually, I think is really interesting is I think our season last year, it didn't get talked about much, but it hinged on that injury he got at home to Forest, I think. He limps off because he just scored those goals against Brentford and he was looking like the guy that was going to break the lines. And I think it didn't really get picked up on much, but I think that injury, when he was out for a couple of months, actually really threw the season into sort of disrepair a little bit. So, and it's so interesting when we talk about these midfielders that need to break the lines and run past people, because we do have them. You just talked about Cess and Harry, and when it's all clicking, they look like a team that can penetrate that top 10 and beat those sides, don't they?
Yeah.
So it feels like what we're missing is actually there, if that makes any sense. It's just like when it all falls together.
Getting it consistently.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a conversation to be had about the fact that Fulham are in a space here where I don't think anyone would sit down and say that Harry Wilson is Fulham's most important player. But equally, the games that Harry scores in tends to be the games that Fulham win. And like there are, as you say, real kind of lines and parallels that you can draw between the periods that Harry Wilson is fit, firing and in form with the way that Fulham go on these winning runs, because he has the ability to find gaps. He has the ability to score from range. He drifts into nice pockets, and he's one of our more consistent scorers over the course of any given season. And I think we all thought when he had that incredible championship season that the next year in the Premier League would be the one that he finally broke out into this stage, because the talent's all there. And you speak to Liverpool fans, I speak to Liverpool podcasters quite a lot, and they're all so desperate to see Harry Wilson fulfil that potential that he had as a youngster. And I think that it's just the injuries that held him back from actually kind of breaking out into one of Fulham's absolute, like, no question top players. I'd love to see a run of games now from Harry and see what we can bring to the table.
It's quite hard for that pack, isn't it? Because there's probably about 6 or 7 of them that can all warrant and swapping. So it's hard for anyone to get a real run, isn't there? Answer me this. I can't remember if you talked about this. How much do we miss Pereira? From a scale to not at all to actually very much.
I think you should ask the man to your left how much.
Because I think off the ball we miss Pereira a lot, and I think that's been a problem as well as talking about Wilson's injury. I think the start of his season, just having in that attacking third, people that are harassing, putting pressure on the ball. I think teams look much more at ease against us than when we had Pereira. I know that a lot of people talked about his set pieces and all this kind of thing, and that's the obvious thing that was a problem with Andreas. And from a very sort of layman's perspective, when you're watching football a lot, if someone's not beating the first man with a set piece again and again and again, then they're obviously going to encourage a lot of abuse their way. But I think what we've learned from the start of this season is what an asset Andreas actually was to that team working, just in terms of just behind that front man, putting a lot of pressure on that ball and teams feeling a little bit rushed. Polina had the same aspect in the defensive third, but I think we're still trying to find who that person is, who's going to do that, and teams look much more at ease with the ball in their defensive half, really.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think what we're seeing is a kind of slightly change in the strategy, in that I think that Josh is better at picking the cute passes. I think he's better at breaking a line. I think he's better at drifting past a man.
Definitely, yeah.
But in terms of the off-the-ball work, I mean, Andreas has almost anyone hands down. That's not really a criticism of Josh King. It's just that, when you see what he put together in those areas, like I said it again after the Wickham game, that I think we miss his ability to whip in a ball flat in open play rather than necessarily from set pieces. I think we were all in agreement towards the end of last season that the set pieces needed to change, right? And that's fine.
Yeah.
But also, he was a bit of Marco's captain on the field in some ways. He was someone that kind of obviously had the full trust, faith, the manager, someone who played in multiple different positions. Was his output good enough to be a pure number 10? Probably not. Yeah. But in terms of what he brought off the ball, absolutely,
he did, didn't
100%. We miss him immensely.
I'm slightly on the other camp that, like,
are you?
I don't think that, like, I would have minded Andreas in the squad, but I think he would have got very few minutes this season. I think that it was essentially between him and Emil Smith-Rowe, your record signing from a year ago, or you let go Andreas Pereira. I think if he was here this year and you had Emil Smith-Rowe, I think he might have come off the bench a few times, considering that Emil Smith-Rowe hasn't played too well.
Slight counterpoint to that. I think that if Marco knew that we weren't going to sign a central midfielder in the summer, he wouldn't have let Andreas go.
Interesting.
I can understand that he would have potentially wanted that depth, but I think Andreas would have got very limited And as you saw when Andreas was here before he was sold, he didn't play in that Brighton game. He clearly was going to be a bit part player this season, and I think probably Andreas must have thought.
Yeah, he probably did.
I think he probably values himself, his self-worth more than being third choice,
which is also fine.
Number 10.
Yeah,
that's totally grand. Yeah.
I also from on the fix when Andreas came on, I just really liked him a lot.
I've heard that. Well,
I was expecting him to be sort of like a slightly aloof or something. But he was really lovely. Really
I've heard he's really, really lovely, and that he would buy presents for a lot of the, not just the coaches and stuff, but all the staff at Motspur. I've heard really good things about him.
So engaged. I mean, I've learned with lots of footballers or cricketers or whatever it is from my life that you can get people that switch it on for the cameras and then just, they're in and out or whatever it is, which is completely fine. But Andreas just felt like a very sweet, engaged personality who didn't feel like he was above anyone. And that probably is gives you a little bit of a idea about what he gave to that team as well, but he was like that as a personality.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I don't know why I've taken us down the Andreas Pereira road, but I just feel like we just miss him a bit.
Yeah, I mean, and also a lot can be said for what that kind of vibe in a dressing room must be. I know him and Rodrigo were particularly close, and I think you remember Andreas did the whole Sequeda thing in the summer, which was about Rodrigo, and I think some people thought, oh, is this Andreas trying to be clever or something that he's actually going? I was like, I think it's actually much more innocent than that. I think he was just trying to be nice to his friend Rodrigo. I think he was a good influence on that dressing room, and it'd be interesting to find out in years to come whether we've missed that this season.
It's also about he did that for Rodrigo, right? And there clearly that connection between them. The question is now how that kind of moves forward, because you like Rodrigo's still a young man, obviously, but you'd like him to be that kind of figure for a Kevin, for example.
Totally.
You have that continuity, especially with the Brazilian camp. If there's an element of that all ties together. The idea that Andreas and Kevin would have never crossed over as well.
Oh my god,
that's
heartbreaking.
There was a weird moment at the end of this match where suddenly all of our injury crisis just seemed to I mean, it's like we did have an injury crisis, but it must be the weirdest injury crisis where every injury was obviously a 10-day injury.
I think it was everyone was injured. So the return dates must have all been at the exact same point.
Because all of a sudden, Tete came back last week, but all of a sudden you had Wilson, Chukwueze, Rodrigo, all suddenly back in the fold. Effectively, it's only really now Jedi that's back out, and you're like, and Anderson returned as well, of course. And I was like,
everything's fine. Actually.
Imagine if Spurs' injury crisis last year had just been 10 days, and everything would have been much easier for them.
Yeah. Chukwueze, brilliant, by the way, absolutely exceptional. One of the things that I am a little bit sad about is that I know we have an incredible Samuel Chukwueze song coming in the next international break.
Well, you literally know.
I know for a fact.
You know what the chant is.
I know what the chant is, and I'm not going to spoil anything now, but it's pretty special.
Whoa.
But for the first time in a long time, Fulham fans have come up with a chant that feels original, in that they're singing Chukwueze to Lip Up Fatty, and I was like, that's niche, and also really good, and I was like, but I know that there's a good one coming.
Sorry, you're teasing a drop of a song that's going to be sung.
Yeah, in the next international break. Yeah.
Well, as in
it's on This Will Catch On.
Someone sends it to This Will Catch On?
Yeah.
You've been given an advance copy?
Look, I just saw it come through, and I just saw it come through on the emails, and I haven't heard it, but I saw the title of the track and what it's to, and I was like, oh, okay, that could be quite special, because it immediately goes in your head. It's not it's not complicated. Anyway, that's enough teasing. Right?
Have we got a Kevin one yet?
I'm burying the lead.
Kevin one yet?
They're doing it to Sway.
Go on, sing.
When the samba rhythm starts to play, Dance With Me.
Okay.
It's quite, which is, look, it's fine. It does a job. I mean, every club in the land now has a.
That's okay.
Really?
That's what happens with good songs. People take them and they go, you'll see soon the versions of, and look, Fulham actually had a version of All We Hear Is Radio Gaga years back for Jamie O'Hara, right?
Oh, because Hearts fans have done the Claudia Braga.
Fans have done a Claudia Braga version,
Braga
but
one.
suddenly that will be back. I absolutely guarantee you that'll be back again soon. So, obviously this is the way it works, but I am excited. But Chukwueze, was excellent, really, really good. Now he should score from 4 yards out, obviously, when he smacks the ball against the post. But about 5 minutes after that, he's on the edge of the box, just sort of on the corner of where it sits. And he has 3 players in front of him. And you're thinking, right, just wait for the overlap. And he just sort of wriggles between the 3 players and unleashes for the far corner. And it's just deflected round. And it just got everybody off their seat. It was like,
Really?
oh, wow, okay, something quite special could be happening
No
here.
way.
And suddenly you're like, okay, he's got a point to prove. And Harry scored, and Harry's had a good game. So you'd imagine that Harry keeps the shirt for the weekend. But if you've got a player who's making that kind of impact off the bench, if he can do that again, we've got a fight there. And competition is always a good thing.
If you could have signed one between Chukwueze and Kevin, who would you have signed?
Oh, that's a great question.
For this season, Chukwueze.
Really?
But I think long term, I think
Kevin will be the guy.
I think Kevin could be really magic.
Very good at the weekend.
Was he?
I thought very composed. Like put it all together a little bit. Like he's still got a few. Like he'll stand up a man and try 7 step overs, and I kind of love that.
Great.
It is a little bit baby Neymar, but when you look at him, this felt like there was more of an adaptation. There are still definitely some positional aspects where like. Iwobi would be running through the middle and he'd be waiting on the sideline rather than going, beyond the fullback. There are still a couple of moments you're like, okay, but you can teach that. What you can't teach is the ability to shimmy through 3 players. Right? What you can't teach is that confidence to go at a man and unleash. And it's starting to come together.
Do you think that's why he's not starting? That sort of telepathic, that idea that he's not quite locked in with the patterns a little bit. Do you think that's why he's not?
Yeah, I still think there's work to do, but like I thought here in this first start, he looked very good. And it was, I think that Marco's clearly got to a point now where he's comfortable with Kevin. In that part of the reason I think that we didn't see Iwobi inside earlier was that he was like, I need him on the left wing because there's the understanding there. The fact that he got the start here, and maybe that doesn't translate to the weekend. Wolves, as we say, poor and in a terrible run of form. They were almost the perfect opponents in some ways.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that he started him here probably suggests that he's starting to find a bit of comfortability about him understanding the rhythms of the game.
Yeah, I hear you.
For us.
It's a big win, because if we didn't win that game, it suddenly feels like quicksand. Everton away,
Oh, God.
Sunderland at home. And I think no matter how good you are, once you're in that moment, and we've had it before in big games, haven't we, where it just felt like, we slightly seized up when it really mattered. That cup quarter final, maybe that Liverpool second leg of a League Cup, and the other way around. It just felt like, I'm not sure I trust when they're really like, if they're seriously under the pump, under pressure, which way this is going to go. So I think that's actually a huge win.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I was really worried because I think if you didn't win this, and like it's always possible not to win a game in the Premier League, no matter who you're playing. I mean, in the end, it was as close to a gimme as you're going to get, considering what Wolves did. But
if you don't beat Wolves at home, it doesn't matter where Wolves finish the season.
Also,
they are bottom of the table without a win. If you don't beat them at home, you're in the relegation battle. It doesn't matter.
And West Ham beat Newcastle, which was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
And Forest got a point against Man United. So I think, and obviously Wolves would have got points as well. So like the whole thing would have opened as well. We would be sitting here saying Fulham are in a relegation battle. I think there's no, maybe, we've backed ourselves to go on a little run and get out of it, but I think you'd have to have been honest and say, if you can't beat Wolves at home,
you're in trouble.
You're in an awful lot of trouble. So thank God, 3 points, 3 goals, clean sheet. And hopefully we can, build on it at Everton on Saturday. So we'll take a break there. Afterwards, we'll look ahead to that match and also discuss Felix's new book. Part 2 of the Fulhamish podcast. It is Sammy here with Jack Collins and Felix White, our special guest today. Jack, obviously, we're heading to Liverpool this weekend. Did you know Liverpool is one of many places in the UK from which you can partake a cruise?
Not from the old Bramley Moor dock, though, because that's where the Dixie is.
Well, maybe. I mean, if you went on a cruise from Liverpool, you would sail right past the Hill Dicky.
And we're going with the Dixie, by the way. Like the Hill Dickies, because if you call it the Dixie, there's that kind of a feeling of like Dixie Dean, who obviously has Everton heritage. It pulls everything together. So the Dixie, I think, is a nicer spot.
It is an awful name for a stadium, isn't it? Anyway, My Kind of Cruise is the world's first cruise booking app and website. And yeah, if you can effectively go to My Kind of Cruise, wherever you want to take a cruise from or wherever you want to take a cruise to, My Kind of Cruise is the perfect website. So right now, from Liverpool, departing on the 17th of November, a 15-night cruise to Canary Islands and Madeira. Or on the 2nd of December, there's a 8-night Christmas markets cruise. There's a festive France cruise leaving in December as well. There is so many different cruise options. So if you're looking for a Christmas getaway, and you don't have to go from Liverpool, it's just one of many places you can go from, then head to mykindofcruise.com or download the app from the Google Play or Apple App Store. Use the code Fulhamish at checkout as well to get an exclusive discount. And My Kind of Cruise is run and founded by a fellow Fulham fan. So what a place to go for your next holiday. That is mykindofcruise.com. And thank you to their continued support of Fulhamish. Felix, let's get into this marvellous book. Whatever will be. Your journey from the extra preliminary round of last season's FA Cup all the way to the final. There's plenty of Fulham in there, but first of all, what was it that inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like because I've been doing some interviews, so I've told this story quite a few times. But I've always wanted to write about football because I've been after the Maccabees broke up, my band, maybe 8 years ago, my world was just sort of spat out into doing lots of different things I didn't expect, sport, etc. Hosting Fulham Fix would be one of those things, just getting inside things that I love but I didn't necessarily expect to be part of. And I always felt like I want to write a long form thing about football, which I hadn't done yet.
Because you did It's Always Sunny Somewhere,
exactly,
the cricket book.
Exactly, yeah. So I wrote a sort of memoir about me growing up alongside the English cricket team, and then every time a moment spoke to something about my life, I went and spoke to those cricketers who defined it, type thing. So I wrote a book about that, which I love doing. But I wanted to do something about football, and we were on tour. I mean, you guys will definitely resonate with this, but my other band, 86 TVs, were on tour last year, and we were at Kendal Calling. And we stopped at Lancaster services, because if you're on tour, that's all you know. If you're on a split van, service stations and venues, that is literally your life, your litmus test for what is going on in the world. And I got there and I realised, it must be Saturday midday, because the services was full of people going to hen dos, football teams, rugby teams, cadets, families. And that's the way you know as a band when you're touring almost what time it is. You just
what day it is.
From the activity inside a service station. And so I was having sort of strange day, and quite often when I'm having a strange time, I will go to find football or cricket, record shops, whatever it is. And so I looked it up, and Penrith was really near Kendal Calling. So I just went totally on a whim, realised I had enough time before stage to go and see Penrith, and it turned out to be the extra preliminary round of the FA Cup, so the very, very first round. When you go and watch proper lower league football, you're with 100 people, and it almost becomes a bit of a wildlife spotting exercise where you're having all these eccentric characters, and especially if you're not from there, you're kind of able to observe how beautiful and how brutal and how mad football is from the outside, if you're not connected to it. So I was kind of picking up all these stories, and then I couldn't get a lift back, and I realised it's an hour till stage. There's no Ubers in Penrith, on the outskirts of Penrith.
No.
And so I was panicking, asking people, no one give me a lift, on stage an hour. And I knocked on the office door, and the guy said he would give me a lift. And when I got in his car, I realised it was the chairman of Penrith, Billy Williams.
Way.
And I really quickly, in that moment, decided I'm going to just invent I'm writing a book about the FA Cup now, because I need to record this chat, an excuse to record it. So I told him, I'm writing around a book about going to every round of the FA Cup. Do you mind if I record a conversation? And that forms the start of the book. And because I realised this is an event. You could tell the entire story of English football through the FA Cup, from extra preliminary to the final, at every single level.
Yeah.
So I just realised there's an adventure to be had here. And then obviously it comes from outside to inside to Fulham eventually, because fortunately, Fulham did have a run, if not the run we all wanted. So there's loads of rounds that tell stories about displacement. Belong at AFC, Wimbledon, MK Dons is one. The last ever FA Cup game at Goodison Park. Loads of different sort of ways football tells stories about things beyond football. And then Fulham are eventually in the fifth round, so it sort of comes from outside of my life to deeply within it at some point.
And I loved in the section where it gets on to Fulham, because it was Man United Fulham, and that day felt massive, because I was at Old Trafford that day, and you tell that story, and I read this book and that chapter having the exact same feelings.
Really?
This didn't feel like another football match.
Yeah.
And I think to Man United fans, it kind of did. Of course, they wanted a cup run. They were the current holders. But to them, they kind of daydreamed into that match, not really knowing that their opponents, us, I've never felt a football game that I wanted to win so badly.
What, this one, the fifth
Yeah.
round, or the one, the Mitro one? No, this fifth round.
No, this fifth round, but
Yeah, yeah.
because of that Mitro game, it
Yeah,
felt personal.
Totally. I was really sort of like, I actually found myself in a really weird state. I can't work out if it's because I do Fulham Fix or I'm getting older or something, but I find it unbearable. My need for Fulham to win is getting more and more unbearable as I get older. And I used to sort of think it was mad that 40, 50-year-old people were bereft at football results, but as I'm getting older, it's becoming weirdly more important to me, more unbearable when Fulham don't win games. It's so strange. But yeah, so the backstory of that is that I actually write into the book that the famous Mitro push one, when we're sailing with 15 minutes left, I'm at my flat watching that. I wasn't at that game, and I'm like making soup, and I'm thinking, I am so detached from this. It's not like the old days when I used to go and watch Fulham all the time and be so invested. Like, I've learned an element of control in my life, but the game sort of pulls me closer and closer towards it, and I start daydreaming about who I'm going to go to the semi-final with, like how that day is going to go, all that kind of thing. And then obviously that moment happens. William Handball, 3 players sent off. We're suddenly 2-1, 3-1. We lose the game 3-1 in the end, don't we? Yeah. And I'm trying to tell a story with that element of like how football teaches you that you cannot control anything. You might like get your little world in order and like put all your barriers up, but it always brutally tells you stuff is going to happen, but you're not going to be able to like change, and you're going to have to live with that. But it sort of teaches you that in a safe way. So anyway, we get to the Old Trafford game, and then that becomes so meaningful to me, as you just explained there, that we win that game. I don't think it was that important to United. Well, they were the holders, United.
Yeah,
as well,
I think it mattered in much respect. But in the away end, it was this deeply personal.
It was a personal experience, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was a personal experience.
And that penalty shootout, I can't remember ever feeling tension in a shoot. You know, I watched the Wickham one the other week, and I was a little bit like, it's gonna be a nightmare if we lose this, just for the confidence. But like nothing, I don't think I've ever felt emotion like it from that away end.
Great penalties as well.
Yeah.
Great penalties. Sanderbergers, Williams, they're all such calm.
And I think at the time, it felt like, well, this is it. We're going all the way.
Yeah.
And we drew Palace, and we were all delighted. At the time, I remember after the game, people were celebrating in the away end because we'd drawn Palace. Everyone was like, that's a winnable home game.
We'd already beaten Palace that season, right? Like, it was a Selhurst, but we'd beaten them. And yes, it was in their bad run, but I think there was a feeling that it was like, okay, like it's not an easy game, but it could have been worse in terms of it could have been City away. Yeah, which is the one that it just inevitably feels like it's going to come out of the hat every time Fulham are in a cup draw. Yeah. It's like, well, when are we going to draw City away and be knocked out? Like, and so like I think there's a celebration that just wasn't that as much as anything else. But like I think it's really interesting feeling the tension you speak about that. And I remember recording the podcast before that United game, and it was almost like it felt a bit like before the playoff final. Like that's what I would. And look, I don't think for me it was quite the same. Equally, I wasn't there, so it was just a little bit different. But I could understand that feeling being similar, and that's. I mean, look, that's what it's about, right? That's what draws you in. I mean, Felix, the bit that grabbed me of the start of those chapters was your journey to Fulham. Yeah, like that was the bit that like really caught me, because I was because I was born into this, right? Like there was no question where I was going to go. My grandfather came over and was a Fulham fan. My dad came back and was a Fulham fan. Like the whole family of Fulham. There was never any sort of jeopardy for me in terms of who I'd support. The frustration is that, it's Fulham in so many ways. But like,
can't change it.
Like, exactly. You're stuck with that one now, and I like can't wait to pass it on to the next gen as well. But like your journey to finding it, I thought was a really, really interesting and quite special part of this.
Yeah, so that becomes a bit of the exploration about how football, with lots of people, like, and you might not think about it as psychoanalytically as this, but it's a way of pinning something on you that says, this is who I am, this is where I belong. And like you say, some people have been given that thing, and so often football tells you can't choose who you support. It's just a thing that happens type thing. But I was never given a football team because my mum was from Palestine, and my dad was from the Isle of Wight and not into football. So when I became a kid, like everyone else in South London, a boy at 7 or 8 obsessed with football, I hadn't been given that sort of tag of where I belonged. And it became interesting to me almost like transgenerationally, because my uncle was also from Palestine, and he was so obsessed at that exact age as well to pin himself to a club that he decided that he supported Wolves. Like like he just was desperate to be like, I'm from a place, and I guess he thought Wolves were cool or something, like something.
He's regretting that these days.
I know. Well, he actually he supports Reading now because he moved to Reading. But anyway, he was like,
wow, it's been
That's even
a brutal transition. I thought you couldn't get much worse.
Yeah, actually not working out for him. But anyway, so he was so sort of like obsessed with this idea of I need to be from a place, and he felt that football was going to do that for him. And my mum, in a complete misunderstanding, heard that her dad had lived in Bromley West, so she decided she supported West Brom because she assumed that to be Bromley West.
Yeah.
But I just thought, like, it's sort of like uncomfortable and sad, but it's also quite funny explanation of how football makes you make a decision and you're sort of desperately like, oh, I'm in this gang type thing from that age. But I hadn't been given a club or anything. And one thing that I almost didn't write in the book is that my uncle takes me to Chelsea when I'm like 8, or I probably am 8. And for a couple of years, I support Chelsea. And Chelsea are getting bigger and bigger. I'm not going that often. And I just had this like feeling in my like insides a little bit, like that this wasn't going to be my home and I was going to feel detached from the experience, but also that sort of shame of knowing if you change your football club, that's like the original sin. That's the only sin. So I was begging my dad to go to football somewhere else, and he just said, not liking football, Fulham Football Club's a nice club, and it's just before Al Fayed, so it's the 96, so it's a year that Mickey Adams is about to take that team to promotion. So we've just come out of that really horrible period, and he takes me to Fulham, and we do the walk that has become my life, but it is my first walk, independent walk into the world. And I remember feeling when I met Craven Cottage that it wasn't like overwhelming or anything. It was just I genuinely think it spoke to me and told me this was a place that was going to support and accommodate my hurt, loss, disappointment. I actually genuinely think that. And I think it was all happening in a subconscious way. But at that time, Fulham were bottom tier. We'd just come out of all that, second bottom in the bottom league or whatever it was a year or two before. So there was a real sense of like eye rolling, what we're going to do with Fulham Football Club. The essence of Fulham was that sort of like heartbreak. And so it became interesting to me that my mum at that point was ill and she died when I was a teenager. So I was having actually a really big, serious loss, like death and disease happening in my real life. But the sort of inner part of my brain was so wanted to like exercise that feeling somewhere. And when I got to Fulham, it was kind of like, I think about it like a children's film or something. It kind of said to me like, you're going to be okay here. We can deal with this together. So I had this weird thing in the early years of Fulham that I would be going to Fulham. And this is something, again, that I nearly didn't say in the book, but sort of privately unpacked. But sometimes I would be wanting Fulham to lose because I'd have I almost wanted the feeling of loss. Shared loss is almost always more powerful than shared victory. And that's what binds Fulham fans together and that kind of thing. But I had this feeling of like, I want to feel the thing that Fulham gives me. You know what I mean? So I felt really guilty, like ashamed about that. But when I was young, I used to get a kick out of it because suddenly there was like physical contact. Everyone would be like, what are we going to do with Fulham Football Club? And I felt like the world, Craven Cottage was aligning with how I felt internally. So a lot of the book becomes about how grateful I am to the cottage, really, that it was the place that I got to practice those feelings and that feeling. And that's why I still feel so attached to Fulham, because I felt like it gave me something that no matter how disappointing it was going to be support Fulham, I would always be repaying it for that. Because you always hear about football club being a religion or being a home and that kind of thing, and it can become a bit of a trope. But when I thought about it, I was like, no, that actually is what Fulham. But it was actually a lifeline, and I think a lot of people feel like that about all of their football teams. But it was interesting to me that the characteristics of Fulham Football Club that I've learned to be true, I instinctively understood on meeting it for the first time. Yeah.
100%.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
I also I love, and what this book epitomizes is, a lot of people would go to an FA Cup match and the story would just be, I woke up and I went to the football match, but what you've got is there's so many thoughts and feelings, and yes, the football match is the center of that, but actually it's the story around that, and your writing style, you really express so much emotion in the storytelling of each match. And I particularly loved, obviously the subject of that day against Crystal Palace, where our whole season kind of tipped upside down. But you framed it all around your 8-year-old nephew Jet, who went from a Fulham fan that wasn't really sure about it and wanted to leave his first game after an hour 2-0 down, to becoming this Fulham encyclopedia. It sounds like. Who was experiencing all of the kind of joys and mostly pain of being a Fulham fan. And that Palace game, you said you went to Brighton away, which we lost 2-1, and that was quite painful. But that day against Palace, that was a day where I feel like it must have been life-affirming for him. Yeah,
well, not life-affirming, life-destroying in lots of ways. But it was like, so what happened with Jet was this, because I'd never been handed Fulham, like I became desperate that when he was born, I was going to hand Fulham down to something. Like I kind of felt like I put my roots down, and it was so I was taking him to Fulham from the age of about 3. And as you do when you're 3, he's sort of like pretending for a second that he can control the ball with his hands and then just switching off saying, can we go home, that kind of thing. But like year upon year, got slightly more involved in it. Normally, you're just asking things like, why is it still say 0 next to Fulham, but the other team's number is moving? Ask questions like that. It's a long story. But anyway, when he got to be like 7 or 8, I hadn't realised this, but I did when writing a book. But that is the age of reason, and so often in football fans' lives, that's when football explodes for you. Not always, but at the age of 7 and 8, because you're learning morality, injustice, geography, reading and writing, communicating with an adult world. And if you fall in love with football, that is your window, without that feeling like a chore. You learn something into all of that stuff, into belonging. So last year, he just suddenly, just almost overnight, just became an obsessive Fulham fan, and every day we're sending each other voice notes about what the team should be. Like he's reading out teams. He's saying weirdly technical things like Sanderberger really keeps us ticking. Like really things that like football fans say to sound clever.
The double pivot.
Exactly. He's saying like weirdly.
You wait till he starts talking about half spaces. You're in big trouble.
So pick up the runners. So, but anyway, he was doing all that, and anyway so we go to this quarter final with Jet. And the really interesting thing in terms of the story is he's not attracted to Fulham because of the loss or disappointment. He's been given it by me. So he doesn't want Fulham to lose. He's desperate for us to win in that first experience. And through him, I'm suddenly like witnessing my own desperation for Fulham to win too. And that initial, almost the way people have in relationships where you're like, I don't get too close, because ultimately you don't want to get hurt or whatever it is. I'm starting to realise like all that feeling for like hoping for them to lose, actually I'm so desperate for us. It's actually because I'm so desperate for us to win. So I'm like exposed to that feeling almost for the first time with Jet. And obviously it goes how we know it goes, and we get beat 3-0. And in the last 10 minutes, we sat at the back of Hammersmith actually, H4, and it's almost like watching him have his first heartbreak. And we have this 10 minutes, because the game's like a full conclusion, where we just discuss how sad life is, how it's the worst day of his life. And he's like staring into the void. And it's like watching him become a real Fulham fan through the experience. Like, oh, he's locked in now. And also this idea that choice you have to make as a Fulham fan, where on your doorstep you could support Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, like lots of people do, but you're making a decision. You're actually making a decision to be unhappy more of the time than those other people, but you're weighing up the sort of the balance of belonging and what feels right to you. So I watch it happen to him, and he still talks to Fulham about me all the time. I'm always anxious about that, but we've got that, and it actually becomes a really emotional thing that I've handed Jet Fulham, and the chain has sort of started there. Do you know what I mean? So that's the Jet.
I mean, I'd love to be like, oh, well, that's 8. He's 8, so that's why he dealt with that in such a painful way. But I mean, he's 33, and I very much had the exact same heartbreak after that Palace game.
My Fulham flag, Felix, says only those who suffer truly learn to love.
That's what I should have called the book. I can't believe it. Why are you telling me that now? Only those who suffer truly knows a lot. That is
No,
so
that'll be
good.
that's for the Fulham specific book.
Yeah,
Right, yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, that's the next one.
Save that for the
Can I
next.
just quickly
trilogy.
ask, because like you guys know more than anything, do you think that's true with you guys as well, that it becomes Fulham losing becomes harder? Is it feeling harder as you get older, or are you learning better perspective? Is that me just being emotionally stunted?
No. I lash out less now.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean, I think the desire to win is far more, but like,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
in I remember, like, they'd be like, we'd lose and I would go ballistic or something, or someone, and I'd be like, inconsolable. I remember being taken by my then girlfriend, now wife, to a gig after a 2-1 loss to Bristol City in the Championship, and I thought we were going to get relegated. I'm pretty sure Lee Tomlin scored 2 free kicks, and I was like absolutely fuming,
Like angry,
like,
angry at the
genuinely.
world.
And we were going up to Ali Pali, and then she was like, I just don't want to go to this gig with you if we're going to be
can't.
like this. Like, and I was like, but we just, I just conceded 2 goals to Leak in Tomlin. Like,
Yeah.
she was like, right, well, she's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, I've got better at controlling that element of it.
Yeah.
But I think that you're right. And also, like, I think there is a natural element of, as you get older, you like, there's always kind of like, oh, I've got 50 years to see Fulham win something. I got 40.
It's running out.
And maybe that's just the kind of really dark finality of man.
I found
No,
the
that
cup
is.
run though, particularly last year, and I think the fact that Palace won it, right, and it's always been us, Palace, Brighton, and those clubs that don't have a trophy, and seeing Palace realise that dream last year, and that's why for me I find the cups so enthralling as a Fulham fan, because we haven't done it, and I can't imagine what that day is going to be like. And you see Palace fans like post that like final are kind of going like, not 100% sure what there's left.
Life is left.
What's left now? Because we've done the one thing that seems so far away and elusive and almost like an impossible dream. And I think the fact that we kind of tasted it last year.
Yeah.
And so, like, do I get bothered? Did I get that bothered when we lost 1-0 to Arsenal? No. Because I'm like, it's a league and you can lose games and you will lose games.
Yeah.
And like,
And it's Arsenal.
And it's or even the Newcastle one, it was last minute. I was a bit like, oh, for God's sake. But
that one hurt.
but those ones where it is the cups particularly, there is just those seminal moments where,
Totally.
and you're chasing something, and I don't often know why we're chasing it, but you just want that one day in the sun where it's Fulham's day, and especially when you pick a team like Fulham, you're just looking, and that's why I always say I would rather Fulham win a Carabao Cup than England win the World Cup.
Oh my God, me 100 times out
because
of
it's
100.
my thing that I'm chasing, and England winning would be a fun day.
No, it wouldn't mean anything as
But
much.
it just would be it would just be something that wouldn't mean all that much personally to me.
Yeah, I think the Fulham thing is a level. It's about expectation as well. There's that old flag at the cottage, isn't there, that says never expecting, always believing.
Yeah.
Which is a bit like that. And I think that, and just to kind of chime in on the international bit, like, I've always been much more divided on that, but I don't support England. So, like, as in, like, Ireland winning a tournament
that
in
was a
football would
similar
be
thing.
as elusive
That's
as
a
Fulham
similar
winning
thing.
something. So,
And it
like,
makes
almost there's a
sense.
level of that's different. Whereas I think with England, and look, rightly or wrongly, there's always a level of expectation that England are going to finally break that curse, break that duck, and like the players available, etc., is a very different thing. So I think that's why we fall slightly differently on that side of the fence.
But I had that as well. Just but that realization with the cup quarter final as well, to chime in on that, is that I realised I'd lived my entire life again since we were last in the cup semi final at Villa Park, the Chelsea one. But I was sort of 19 or something when I went to that game. So I'd lived that whole chunk of life again. But between that and the next quarter final, and exactly what you're saying, it just gives you an idea of the finality of life.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, am I going to be 65
Yeah.
when we got a cup semi final? Like,
We better be
Plausibly.
third time lucky.
yeah, exactly. And then it's like, okay, 90. Read it on 90. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, look, Felix's book is called Whatever Will Be, Will Be, and it is such a beautiful chart through football via the FA Cup, the stories that are there. I think it's such a wonderful premise for a book. So, look, if you're looking for a Christmas present for a Fulham fan in particular, but it doesn't have to be a Fulham fan, a football fan, then it is a perfect book. And obviously there is a big old sprinkling of Fulham in there, which is lovely. Before we finish the podcast, we should just probably look ahead to Everton on Saturday. at the Hill Dicky. But I'm heading up to this. Obviously, I think we've taken a full allocation, which is quite rare for Everton away. It's
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah, not something but I think a lot of people are excited by a brand new stadium and something different. I know I am. And Jack, I think looking at this, and it's a big old spin from last week, I think there's every chance.
Yeah, look, it's a strange one because Everton are a bit of a funny team right now. Like the loss to Spurs was their first home league loss this season. I think it was the first time they ever lost the men's team at the Hill Dickinson, or the senior men's team at least. And then you're kind of looking at it and saying, okay, then they go and they actually get quite a credible point at Sunderland in the grander scheme of how the season has worked out, but they were battered second half, and the fact that they couldn't take any of their chances in the first half kind of gives you a little bit of hope. I think at fullback they look a little bit vulnerable. I love Jake O'Brien, but I think he's a centre half, and I think Mikalenko's been up and down all season long, and Everton fans have been a bit on his back. But can we get those wingers into the game? Can you go Kevin and Wilson again? Do you get Chukwueze in there and try and really go at the fullbacks? I think this actually could end up being quite an entertaining game. Now, I'm not 100% sure that Marco is going to go the same way. I know that he likes an unchanged team when things are going well, but I don't know if does he have the stones to go and go with a Iwobi in the midfield again? Is Sasha coming back into that midfield to stiffen it up? Question marks. But these are good problems to have, right? Like Chukwueze or Wilson on the right wing, good problem to have. Do you move Iwobi out wide, or does Kevin get the full game? Good problem. Is it going to be Raul, or is it going to be Rodrigo back up top? Like, these are issues that we would have hoped to have had 2-3 weeks ago, as opposed to being problems. So I think we look at it from a positive way. I don't think Everton have been great. They had a good start to this season. I think that some of the conversation around them was a little bit overblown, given the fact that it was the new stadium and there was excitement around it. They had a good win. I think it was against Brighton. And that one you were like, oh, okay. But since then it has tailed off a tad. And I think you're kind of looking at it and thinking, this is a team that are good, and if we are sloppy, then they will punish us. But they have their own issues, especially up front, especially in these fullback positions. Can we take advantage of those situations to make it stick? Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this, and obviously the danger man has been Grealish all season.
And Dye.
Yeah, I mean, Dye scored a wonderful goal.
Also, he's their best player by a country mile.
Yeah. But, I mean, they have, as you say, second half against Sunderland, they were poor. They were quite good in the first half. And even that win against Palace, I watched that game. They were abysmal in the first half against Palace. They actually came back to win 2-1 and picked up and were impressive. I think, Felix, Everton is one of those old clubs, whether it's at Goodison Park or the shiny new stadium, if you go 1-0 up, the boos will come out. Like, it is just, you want to unsettle the home crowd, and that's the key for Fulham, really, is frustrate the home support. Don't let them ride an early wave for 15 minutes. And I think if we see 15 minutes 0-0, I'll think we're in a position here to get something.
They weirdly did us, didn't they, in the end of last year at Cottage, when we sort of fell away and we went 1-0 up. I think Raul scored, and we ended up getting beat 3-1 in the last 10-15 minutes.
We got moised a bit.
Yeah, a little bit we did, didn't we? And I don't think we've won away from home yet, have we? So this would be a really big game for us to win today, and you just hope that they go into the game a little bit. It's a big moment for our season again, I think, because we need to go on a little run now, don't we? Just need to sort of, and it feels like when you're reading off all the options we have, for the first time, it feels like that's the proper Fulham team.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed. Can I just quickly tell you, I messaged Jet asking him what I thought the score would be yesterday.
Yeah.
Not for Percy's podcast, and he told me. So can I just quickly put down the microphone?
Yeah, of course.
3-1 Fulham or 2-0.
Reasons?
Because I think we're going to have a really strong lineup, and Everton are just going to lose their minds and just get off the game and just be Dyer. I know he's going to score at least one goal, but other than that, I don't think they're going to score.
There you go.
Get him on.
That's what I think.
Get him on. Yeah. Look, he's already too good for the juniors. Promote him. It's Josh King.
I've had 10 good years doing this, and that's fine. It's more than most people get. So,
Changes come
on, Jet. Host the next podcast. Absolutely wonderful.
If Jet ended up in here, that would be so good. Let's do a guest appearance at some point.
Look, when Ivan's off.
Yeah, exactly. Fulham fix.
Yeah,
totally.
Rope Jet in.
He would actually ask the players some quite penetrative questions, actually, I think. Anyway.
As you say, out of the mouths of babes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, like, I think it's obviously nice to go into a game and like we're not. It's funny that the last couple of weeks we've been almost scrabbling around for options, and suddenly I'm like, oh wow, he could play Josh King in the 10, we could play Kevin out on the left, we could play Iwobi on the left, we could put Sasa and Sando. I'm almost now kind of like, Marco's got the tools at his disposal here to have a good go at this game. And it's a landmark game, right? Because it's a new stadium, there's a big crowd going up there, Felix. And I think you're right that there's been a few opportunities I felt like this year, particularly for me, like the Bournemouth and Villa games, where I was like, if we'd have just gone one of those games, and they were winnable games considering what happened within them, I think Fulham would be feeling really rosy in the table. And this is an opportunity now for Fulham to actually not just put like a small distance between themselves and that mess at the bottom, actually to show the rest of the Premier League, don't write Fulham off. Don't think we're in a relegation battle. This is a good Fulham team, and actually we can mix it with anyone.
Totally.
You know, no, we're not. I wouldn't say we're favourites to go and win this match, but there's absolutely no reason, given the kind of patchy form that Everton have had.
It's a 50-50 game, I think,
it's
isn't
an
it?
Acca-buster, isn't it?
Yeah. An Acca-buster, explain that.
Like, as in, if everyone be back in 6 teams in the Premier League,
Oh, right,
it doesn't matter
yeah.
which side you back there, it's going to lose.
Exactly. So true. Can I just one little technical thing, but I haven't heard you guys talk about, maybe you have, but it hasn't been brought up about Fulham's season so far, is that we've been weird in the last 15, 20 minutes of games, and that's because of injuries, but last year we were famously really good in the last 15, 20 minutes of games, weren't we? We nicked a lot of points. This season, if you think about everything that's gone down, most of it's happened in the last 15 minutes of game. Have you guys explored what that's about? Maybe it's just injuries and being slightly short and teams going through the gears. It's probably
so.
that, isn't it?
There's a thing about Fulham in the last elements of games. And last year, you're right, like we won a lot of games late.
Yeah.
From like losing positions, or we nicked a point. We also threw away a lot of leads. So it was like almost kind of, we were sort of both. We were like, well, if we're losing in the 80th minute, we might win this one. If we win in the 80th minute, we might lose it.
Yeah.
It feels like we'd lost the ability to kind of find a way into games late on, and the kind of throwing it away bit had remained, which is not the ideal solution for what you were looking. I was like, keep the attacking bit, just shore up defensively. I just think we've looked a little bit unsure of ourselves, and like you said it earlier, you know, about freezing up, etc. And I think that there was an element with Fulham. Yes, part of it was just not being able to make the changes we would have liked, but two, just being a little bit kind of like, are we capable of actually getting this over the line, that hadn't been necessarily addressed. You know, you even look at some of the wins. The Brentford game, you'd probably look at and say until the weekend, was our only real complete performance over 90 minutes. The Leeds game, we weren't great. We got a little bit lucky with the goal at the end.
Yeah.
The cup games weren't particularly, cohesive. The weekend was much better. So now it's a question of, can you kind of wrap that and the Brentford game and go, okay, in those two games we did have options. Can we now move that forward with the squad gelling a little bit more and options on the wings? And I think that we've looked to be a little bit too defensive when holding a lead. And part of that, I think, is Marco going, I don't have the options to change a game from an attacking perspective late on. And instead of going for that second goal, we're like, right, get in and try and defend that lead. And that, I think, has been a bit of our downfall.
Very telling as well that we're just not having Rodrigo around or Raul for a bit, is that so often you have that last 20 minutes, one of them comes on and just gives it fresh energy. Yeah. We haven't had that, and it just sort of tells a little bit as well, doesn't it? Yeah.
Felix, final question. You obviously have become a cup expert in the last year.
Cup specialist.
Yeah. So
Oliver Glasner over
it. Felix White, cup specialist. I want to ask you how far Fulham will go in each of the cups this year. And look, if you get this right, we'll clip this up at the end of the season and you're going to look like a genius.
Okay.
And if you get it wrong, we'll consign it to the trash can and no one will ever hear it
No one
again.
ever see it.
Okay.
So, Carabao Cup. We're obviously already in the quarters.
Newcastle were rubbish last week at West Ham. I think after what happened, we went toe-to-toe with them and went the other way. I think we can ambush Newcastle. And I think Marco wants to win a cup so bad. I think he's going to prioritise that. I think we win that game. I think we get 2 legs. Who have Cardiff got?
Chelsea.
Okay, Cardiff get through that somehow. And we get 2 legs against Cardiff and we're in the final of the League Cup. I can't tell you what happens beyond then. The FA Cup, we get a rough draw and we get knocked out in the 4th round by Liverpool.
I'll take that.
We'll take that, won't we?
Look, you give me a 50-50 coin flip of winning the Carabao Cup, I'll take almost anything.
100%. Felix, it's been an absolute joy. do buy his book, whatever will be, and obviously check out the Fulham Fix podcast. Any good Fulham fixes on the way? Maybe can't say who.
We've got a couple. We've had some really good ones recently. I think the Ross McCormack is about to come out. That'll be really good. No, it hasn't been out. I don't think it's been out.
I don't think it's out.
No, we haven't had it. Do you know what? He was really good.
I saw an interview of Ross.
Interview footage came out.
Doing it. Yeah.
He's talking about
at the
Tom
club.
Kearney.
He was great because it was obviously such a strange time at the club, Ross, just with Maccabees. He had some interesting things to say about Maccabees, which you wouldn't expect, and just being the personalities around that side, because such a talented football, Ross, and to all intents, really, we would have been a League One team if it wasn't for Ross McCormack in that season.
100%.
And he's a very likeable personality. He's not a sort of. I thought he was going to be a bit more bullish, but he was actually very sweet. So that's a good one coming up. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, do check that out with Felix. I'm sure everyone that listens to Fulhamish also listens to Fulham Fix, because we all love Fulham.
Come on, Fulham.
It's been an absolute joy. Felix, thank you very much.
Pleasure. And just quickly, as this is the official voice of Fulham Football Club speaking, your podcast is unbelievable.
Oh,
and all Fulham fans should listen to it, but don't, because I listen to it twice a week, like I say. So yeah.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you very much.
Sweet.
Jack Collins, thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. It was a pleasure.
It's been an absolutely wonderful podcast today. If you're heading up to Liverpool and going to the Everton game, enjoy. Maybe see you there. If not, hope you're able to enjoy the game wherever you are watching it. Have a wonderful weekend. You Whites.
You Whites.
You Whites.